right, welcome back to the Scarlet Faithful Podcast. I'm Aaron Brightman. As always, this episode is brought to you by Knights of the Raritan, the Rutgers NIL Collective. Click on the link in the description of this episode to join their free newsletter, find out everything that's going on within their organization. They do extensive coverage of Rutgers athletics now that the school year is about to start, as well as how to become a member to support Rutgers student athletes with NIL. This episode is going to cover my visit on Friday to Rutgers men's basketball practice. I've been wanting to get there all summer. Work has been pretty busy. Life has been pretty busy, but I was fortunate to be invited and be able to go Friday, August 2nd, and a lot to take away from it, and wanted to kind of dive in, give thoughts overall on just how this team looked. I want to go player by player and just my thoughts in general in terms of this summer, what they've accomplished and what now the next step is, with about a week to go before they break until the school year begins. So let's start. I'll go through player by player, just some observations, thoughts in terms of it. And again, I want to preface this, it's one practice, but I'm also combining some of these thoughts with things I've heard in terms of just how this summer has gone and things that I saw with my own eyes on Friday. First off, Tyson Acuff was there. Still has the cast on his leg. He's on schedule as expected. They think he's going to be walking before the end of the month, well before the end of the month. So, they had always said by the time the school year begins, he would be starting to train again. And it sounds all good in that regard. And it was also good to see players on the team make a point to say hi to him, bring him in. He was in the huddle. They had him even in one of the drills. He was on the court directing players. So it was good to see just the camaraderie. And I think overall theme of this team is they seem very connected. They seem to get along. They just all seemed on the same page. And I'll get more into that in a bit. But the Tyson Acuff injury, that was just an example of players going out of their way to make sure that Tyson was involved in practice, even though obviously he couldn't go. In terms of two of the freshmen, Bryce Dortch and Dylan Grant, both honestly, physically really just stood out. Bryce Dortch is really tall, definitely taller than 6'8", which his recruiting profile, I think he's listed at close to 6'10" now, and he's every bit of it. I mean, he's skinny. He needs to put on some muscle. But, the thing that also jumped out, and I was fortunate, I got to see a pretty extensive scrimmage. They went at it for a pretty long time. I was told it was about as long as they've gone all summer. Every player, all 10 players that participated, Dylan Harper did participate in practice, but is still being held out in contact, which is smart precaution. It's just simply because, it's August and there's no reason to rush him back. But he looked phenomenal, but I'll get to him in a minute. But Bryce Dortch made a play in the scrimmage, basically in traffic, jumping over everyone for a offensive putback tip-in that really turned everyone's eyes. And it was great to see the players kind of support each other and react to each other. But he made a show-stopping offensive play. He certainly, has a learning curve as a freshman. But just in terms of his overall potential, he's kind of like Spider-Man. I mean, he's just like very athletic and very wiry and, just has a ton of potential. He's going to be, I think, defensively a really good player for Rutgers. And you could see flashes of what he can bring offensively. So I was excited to see him. And then Dylan Grant, I mean, he is a specimen. His arms, he looks like, he is not fully developed, and he is already huge. I mean, his arms were gigantic, but just the way his body is, he is going to get massive. He's going to be a real presence inside, but he showed the ability to play in the perimeter as well. He had a 3 at one point in the scrimmage, and he plays under control. He plays within himself, and all the young guys had their eyes wide open in terms of learning things. If there were mistakes made, getting feedback from players. I mean, the players were really driving things in terms of corrections and in one another's ears. That was really encouraging to see how active this team was. And that's been a criticism of this team in recent years, as there wasn't enough talking. There wasn't enough, not enough vocal leaders on the floor. Steve Peichel talked about this in my interview with him a couple months ago, that he feels like that's one thing that's going to be much different about this team in terms of their talking on the floor, and you could see that very much in practice. But Dylan Grant certainly has physical abilities, and just I liked his way. I just liked how he was going about his business. He's tough. I mean, all these guys, I thought the toughness jumped out in practice. I mean, they were going really hard at each other, and there was a camaraderie there in terms of a competition, but at the same time, there wasn't this animosity. They were picking each other up. They were giving each other their all, but it was all towards the same goal, and that was very apparent in watching this practice for as long as I did. But both freshmen, it's going to be interesting to see how much they play this year. I do think probably Dylan Grant has a better chance of getting into the rotation than Dortch, simply because of the way the rest of the roster is constructed. But in terms of a long-term projection, I think both these players bring a lot to the table and can develop into very productive players for Rutgers in the future. Then talking about Lathan Somerville, what I loved about him was that you could see him learning and figuring things out in real time on the court. He was workshopping stuff as it happened. There was a real spirit on the court. When things went wrong, players were pissed, but in a good way, like wanting to do it the right way, not making excuses, not, getting into it with other players. They were taking feedback, guys that really stood out in terms of leadership, Jeremiah Williams, Zach Martini. But PJ Hayes was one that really stuck out to me, was, making sure guys were in the right spots, really talking to guys. And that was really encouraging to see also. But Somerville has things you can't teach. He showed an ability to finish in traffic. He's under control. He can step out and shoot it. He's very comfortable out there. Although you can see the speed is a little much for him right now, I think. You could see him all, kind of absorbing it and learning. And he just looks like a player that's just going to keep getting better and better and better as the year goes on. And I feel like his role is going to grow and grow and grow because of also in terms of what he gives them at the five, the ability to space the floor. He can be on the perimeter and he looks comfortable doing so. Emmanuel Igbole, physically, he is impressive in person. He's a specimen. It's going to be interesting to see him in front of Cliff, next to Cliff on the court in Vegas. I feel like Emmanuel is bigger than Cliff, and it might not even be close. And that's no disrespect to Cliff, but Emmanuel is just massive. He looks like an action figure in terms of his build. I believe they said his body fat's like 6% right now. It's pretty crazy. Just the whole team physically, you could see the work that they put in this offseason. They just look so in shape, fit, athletic. But in terms of Ebola, he's going to play his role. He was dunking with the best of them. Offensively, I think a key that I saw from him was that his ability to pass to the perimeter. If he can do that in terms of when he gets the ball to look for teammates outside, that is going to be positive. Obviously, his defense, his rebounding is really going to define his role and his contributions, I think. And he's going to get his points off of dunks in space, teammates finding him, or offensive rebounds. But if he can pass out of the post to the perimeter and find open shooters behind the three-point arc, Cliff was fantastic, but that was something that he struggled with. And that was certainly something that I think Igbole can bring to the table that people aren't really thinking about. In terms of Jordan Durkak, tough as nails, really fearless player in terms of defensively, offensively. He was making drive. He had a baseline drive and one that was a really tough finish in traffic. He was, making plays in terms of defensively. He was not afraid of. He had a block shot on. He had a really tough stop defensively in the post. He's just really, really tough. He brings that Pikel edge that they need. And it's going to be interesting to see where he shakes out in the rotation. But I think that, he certainly brings a lot, his work ethic. And, he can handle the ball. He brought the ball up quite a bit. And just in terms of his ability to distribute, he had a high assist rate. And Merrimack obviously had a high turnover rate too. So his decision-making, needs to improve. But I think that, he, as a secondary guard in terms of the ball handling, it's going to be a plus to have him in that rotation. In terms of J. Mike, again, very impressive. He's made real strides this offseason. It's going to be interesting to see where he shakes out. I know some people are even projecting now he's going to start. Personally, I think in how this team looks personnel-wise to space the floor, I think J. Mike would probably be makes more sense coming off the bench as that third or fourth guard and be able to push the pace and back up Dylan or Jeremiah because I think having Ace with a Martini or Hayes and then a 5 will help space that floor more, but we'll see. And he obviously has a great rapport with Ace. But J. Mike was doing great things on Friday and what I saw. I mean, he hit a couple threes. He was finishing at the rim. There was one fast break play. PJ Hayes made a tremendous pass. I don't even know how he got it to J. Mike. And J. Mike got knocked down on the floor and finished. And it was pretty remarkable. I couldn't even believe he got the shot up. He basically scooped it as he was falling down and it went in. And he's just, although he's not significantly different physically, he's stronger. He's holding himself differently. He's confident, and he's just playing within himself. And he plays hard all the time, and he brings speed, athleticism to this team. He can really push it on the break. He's got a great rapport with Ace, of course, and he's going to earn minutes. It's going to be interesting to see how that rotation is. But he has really looked much improved. Everyone's raving about him, and from what I saw on Friday, certainly matched up in terms of those types of feedback that hearing on J. Mike. And I think that he fits this team in terms of he just puts his head down and he works, and that's the type of mentality this team, I think, as a whole, really does have this early in the process, which is super encouraging. Zach Martini was solid. Hit a couple threes. His ability, along with PJ Hayes, quick releases from the perimeter. They took several threes in traffic. They really don't need much space to get shots off. They have the size. They can shoot over the defense. Their form, their quick release, and they were making threes with hands in their faces. So that was super encouraging. But Martini, certainly has a leadership role on this team. A little bit, not like super loud or anything, but just getting in guys' ears, helping guys out. Teaching along the way, doing the right things, being in the right spots. He's, physically very strong and just looks really tough. And this team is just, it's about the little things. And you can see them doing that. I mean, this scrimmage, they were going after each other. It was almost like a football scrimmage at the end of training camp when you see a team and you're like, they need fresh meat. They need to just play another team because they've just been going at it for so long amongst each other. And that's the way this team looked. And it's only early August, which is a great sign because they were competing at a really high level. They were diving on the floor with each other. They were mixing it up. They were fouling each other really hard. They were going at it just in terms of, to the basket. I mean, full throttle offensively, full throttle defensively. Guys were getting knocked to the court, but everybody was in it. It was all towards one common goal. And it was just really impressive to see this team play as hard as it did not. Biggest takeaway I would say is this did not feel like an early August summer workout practice. This felt like a mid-season or even like before tournament play or December break, right before Big Ten play starts. There was urgency on the court. They were playing with purpose. There was spirit there. It was great to see. And in terms of PJ Hayes, he is the shooter that I hoped he would be. Just in terms of his form is so consistent. And his release, it's a high, quick release. He shoots with tremendous confidence. I have an interview coming out with him very soon. And he was talking about keeping his confidence up and his teammates believing in him. And it was a great thing, too. Like, before they scrimmaged in certain drills, if a guy would miss a three, they give it right back to him and make it and then try to make it the next shot. And PJ Hayes made a lot of threes in practice. And his form, his build, the way he sets his feet, the way he can just get himself ready for the shot. He's just a veteran in that sense. And I thought his passing ability, his vocalness with his teammates, his willingness to, it was all really impressive. And then just in terms of the big three, J. Will, Ace, and Dylan, Jeremiah Williams, very passionate, vocal leader, plays super hard, quick first step, was able to beat guys off the dribble as usual, like last year. And he's just going to be, that grizzled veteran. And for a guy that, has been through a lot in his career in terms of transferring, Temple, then, committing to Illinois, then Iowa State, Temple, then Iowa State getting hurt, then Illinois being committed for a minute, and then at Rutgers, the suspension, getting through all that, you really see like he's reborn, and he is truly cherishing the opportunity that this team has. And you can just see it. His eyes are wide open and he is locked in. And that is a really good thing for this team and the role that he is taking on. And I think with all the guys, and this now goes to Ace and Dylan, they were part of the team. There was if you walked into practice and you didn't know who Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper were, you would have no idea that they were two of the most sought after, highly ranked NBA draft projected players. You'd have no idea other than watching them on the court and seeing their skill level and how they can play. But in terms of how they interacted with the team, how they went about their business, it was 1 through 12. Everybody was connected, and it was just great to see that kind of team morale already. Everybody talked about the players I talked to after, just the bond that this team has, how much they're putting work in off the court in terms of being at the APC together, playing together off hours. They understand the opportunity they have, and they're all putting their best foot forward. It's August. PJ Hayes talked about, understanding what's in front of them and what they have to put into things now to get to where they want down the road. And that was very apparent in practice on Friday. Ace, he is just effortless on the court. He makes it look effortless in terms of how he moves. He's like a gazelle running up and down, and he's going to make plays that several times in the game that you're going to look at him and be like, no one on the court can make that play but him. And, he can make some just super athletic plays. He was very unselfish. He was making the right passes. He had a couple blocks on D in the scrimmage. He, can obviously make up ground. He can run up and down the floor forever. And then just in terms of, being a complete offensive player, developing that perimeter jump shot, getting consistency there, that's really where the sky is going to be the limit for him. But everyone has a ton of confidence in him, and he plays with a certain edge just in terms of his confidence, but also everything he can do on the court. He is going to be a problem for so many teams. And I really do think, and I think for the offense in general, with Dylan Harper, when he's able to be the leader of this offense, it's going to make everyone better. It's going to improve spacing. It's going to improve shot selection. It's going to really benefit Ace, I think, to have Dylan on the floor, who understands how he plays, his strengths, how to get him the ball. I think that's going to be just a real boon for Ace's development in terms of Dylan getting him shots, high percentage shots, good scoring opportunities. Because listen, Ace in his career, he's used to bringing the ball up and having to create shots on his own. And in Big Ten play, you can't just dribble through a defense, right? And you're going to need an elite playmaker to help get you the ball. And obviously this offense, the way they move the ball, the way they screen, the way they, have movement off the ball is all going to be part of that, spacing the floor. But I think Dylan is just going to make everyone better. And I think the most impressive thing with Dylan, first of all, physically, he is just, he has grown. He is a different, in the last 6 to 9 months, he's a different person in terms of how he is built now. And he looks every bit of 6'7" that he's listed at. He's, stronger. He's a little bit thicker. And he just, his body control, the way his shot has improved so much. And it's so consistent in terms of repeatable shooting mechanics, fundamentals, and the way he gets into his shot. He really gets his legs into his shot really well. And he looks like I think he's going to surprise people with how good his shot's going to be. And I think he, has a chance to be, without a doubt. We had an whole episode on the backcourt and, Raphael Davis saying it's Rutgers' best backcourt in the Big Ten. Dylan Harper has a chance to be one of a handful of the best guards in the country. Could he be the best guard in the country? He could. He really could. Like I said, he couldn't play in the scrimmage. They're holding him out as a precaution, which is very wise. But just in terms, he did do a full court drill at one point. non-contact. But in terms of his shooting, and they put a video out yesterday after practice, he's just so smooth, and his decision making, his poise, his ball handling and playmaking ability is going to do so much for this offense. Listen, the scrimmage was long. They really let him go at it for a long time. They got tired at the end, but they competed the whole time and they were battling. But it was just very obvious that when you put Dylan Harper at the front of that offense and orchestrating everything, I really think they're going to be playing beautiful music at the rack this year. My closing thoughts on this team: I think they're extremely tough. I think the veterans all bring a toughness, and they all bring a maturity. I thought the overall maturity of the team, especially the younger guys, they all were learning, taking feedback, trying to process things, wanting to understand the right way to do it. And there was no sulking. There was no. It was just everybody was rowing in the same direction, and everyone was like an open book in terms of getting feedback. And again, the coaching staff. I mean, I think one thing that stuck out to me was Pikel. He showed tremendous urgency. I've seen a bunch of practices of his over the years, a good amount, pretty much every season. And again, going back to the point, this did not feel like a summer workout, and he had the urgency of a midseason coach as well, just in terms of correcting certain things, making sure that there were some big principles that this team was buying into, re-emphasizing the importance of that. He was very vocal and making certain points that were keeping this team, their mindset, their focus on what's important in terms of the identity of what they want to be. And I think that there is a clear understanding within this program of, if they want to achieve great things, they have to do it the right way and do it 100% from day one. And that was very obvious to me in practice. There's a week to go. It was 95 degrees yesterday. They had an elite camp beforehand. Players came right from the weight room. It wasn't like they were just rolling out of bed, going right to practice. And everybody brought a ton of intensity and urgency to that practice, where, a lot of teams could have just kind of gone through the motions. With summer almost over, they've put a ton of work in. Guys have lost weight. I mean, Lathan Somerville and PJ Hayes look completely different from the way they looked at the start of camp. I talked to PJ Hayes about it. I mean, he was talking about, how he slimmed down and his plan. He wants to lose a little bit more, but he looked completely different. Lathan Somerville looked a lot stronger. Guys putting on muscle. They physically, I mean, it's not even the same league as last season's team. They are just so physically superior. When they walk on the court, they're going to look, again, it's all going to come down to execution. It's going to come down to how they shoot, how many stops they get, all that stuff, right? Decision-making. But in terms of how they look, how they compete, how they're processing things, how they're meshing as a team, all of the things that you want and see out of a great team, they're doing that. They're doing that. That doesn't mean they're going to be a great team, but there's certainly a talent level on this team that leads you to believe that if they do it all the way they're doing it, they have a real chance to be special. A lot of things have to happen. Defensively, we'll see. There were some good things that you saw. It's going to take some time for I think, roles and guys to kind of figure things out. But there is certainly an emphasis and a focus on defense. And you see that Pikel toughness in this team already. And I just think 1 through 12, depth-wise, this is as deep of a team as Pikel has had. Again, you have some green freshmen, right? But you have the athleticism, the size, the versatility. It's bar none the most deep team he's ever had. And I think there's value in that in the practice floor, because the way they're able to compete, the way they're able to match up and switch off in terms of different matchups, and how guys are getting challenged. And the two teams, it wasn't like team A, team B. He really mixed it up, veterans with young guys, which I thought was smart. And that really emphasized the teaching component of practice, because all the veterans on each team were pulling the younger guys aside. But you really just see how it's also helping this team mesh and build team chemistry and a bond. And honestly, closing, the best part of practice was that when it ended, nobody left. Nobody left. When the whistle blew and they huddled up and that was the end of practice, nobody left. You had PJ Hayes take the 3 freshmen, Grant, Somerville, and Dortch, to a baseline, and they were shooting corner three after corner three after corner three. You had Dylan, Ace, and J. Mike go on the other end of the floor and go through 3-point shooting drills with Brandon Knight. You had Jeremiah Williams take a group to the free throw line. And these guys just kept shooting and kept working out for a while after practice was over. That, to me, was a huge telling sign that these guys were putting in the work. And everyone says this is just consistent. It was just another day in terms of how this team goes about their business. People I've spoken to from, in terms of how they looked in early June, mid-June when they started to now, they've progressed quite a bit as a team. And they're just the energy level, the athleticism, the way they're able to just the pace of play, their intensity, their connectedness. It was all A+. It was all super encouraging. And again, a lot has to happen for this team to be great. But I thought in terms of the intangibles you wanted to see, the versatility, and also the refinement. There was like J. Mike had a move on a fast break, and you saw him do something that he didn't do last year, where he was in traffic and he just slowed up half a second, paused, and then made the right pass versus forcing it and turning it over or getting caught up in traffic. There was those little types of things that you started to see in the scrimmage where it's starting to click and they're starting to do the little things. It's not just about hustle plays, but it's about making the right play offensively that's going to be a difference between a basket or not. And you started to see that with this team. I mean, Ace was, his passing ability is really promising. I just think overall the willingness to share, of course, it's easier to share the basketball in August than it is in November. But I think that this team showed an ability to really be connected on the floor. And I'm super excited about what this team brings. And last thought, the last three players on the court, as I was leaving, shooting hoops, still getting in reps, JaMychal Davis, Ace Bailey, and Dylan Harper. And when your two most talented players are your last two on the court taking shots, that's what championship teams do. That's what great teams do. When your best players are your best workers, that is a huge sign. And obviously they have huge goals and they're putting in the work. And that, to me, how they went about their business, that was super encouraging. Like I said, if you didn't know who they were, you'd have no idea the hype that they bring. They just put their heads down and they work. And that can be said for everyone on this team. So very optimistic. Can't, blow it out of proportion in the sense of doesn't guarantee a thing. But in terms of what you hope to see, what I hope to get out of practice on Friday, I feel like I saw everything I wanted to see in terms of a checklist of how is this team progressing? Do they have a chance to do special things in March? And leaving that practice, I felt like, they have a chance. They really do have a chance. I really appreciate you listening and watching once again here at the Scarlet Faithful Podcast, and I'll talk to you soon.